Welcome to the Addiction Connection podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shaw. Today's topic is Abraham and addiction. It's interesting, I was studying in Genesis 12 and Genesis 20 about Abram and who later became Abraham. And I was thinking about this life lesson for all of us. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 10, it says, "Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarah, his wife, 'I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, "This is his wife." Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake." Then it continues in verse 14. "When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And for her sake he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, 'What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go.' And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had." Now you may be thinking, what in the world does this have to do with addiction? And you would be right if I stopped here, that there isn't a whole lot that is common here. But here's the life lesson that I wanted to talk about. For one thing, Abram is afraid. And typically when you see lies and deception, when you're working with the addicted or when you are addicted, you deceive people, you tell lies, you withhold truth. I mean, there's more than one way to deceive someone. Someone wrote a book and mentioned 120 different ways that we tell lies or that we lie to other people. And sometimes it's just withholding information. Sometimes it's an exaggeration. It could be a lot of different things that are done in order to tell a lie or to deceive someone. Well, in this case, Abram is concerned about his own life. He wants things to go well for him, and he's afraid he'll be killed. And I think that's the fear underlying this lie. And you always want to look for fear underneath a lie. When someone tells a lie, you want to find out what are they afraid of and ask that question, because that's typically motivating it. And the Bible teaches us that. And so he says, "Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. So say you're my sister," which is a half-truth. Now, it's not a full-blown lie because she is his half-sister. And so this half-truth is partly true, but he's not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, that she is also his wife. But his motivations revealed in verse 13, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. And you're just thinking about poor Sarah in the middle of all of this, being a devoted wife and loving her husband and being torn in this way and following his lead. And sure enough, the Egyptians saw that she was beautiful. Pharaoh praised her, or she was praised and brought to Pharaoh and taken into his house. And he dealt well with Abram because of her and her sake, as her brother. But then God afflicts Pharaoh. The plagues come. The truth is going to come out, even though it's not Abram that's going to bring the truth out. It's the circumstances around him. And when you think about the addicted, their lifestyles is no different. They are having problems in all kinds of ways because they're not fully transparent. They're not living in the truth. And so things start to catch up with them. Other lies, other problems, other plagues, if you will, start to crop up. And now they're having to deal with life and, and quit lying about their sin and their choices to be addicted and so forth. And so in verse 18, Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." Well, Pharaoh has to do the honorable thing for Abram. Abram, who knows the Lord, is not the one doing the honorable, righteous thing. Pharaoh is in this case. And Pharaoh's confronting Abram about his lies, about his deception, and the fact that he said, you're saying she's my sister, so I took her as a wife. And then Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent away Abram with his wife and all that he had. It's similar to working with the addicted when there are so many deceptions and withholding of truth and half-truths and different problems that arise. And finally, it's, the addict. I think about the addict who's been using their charge card and spending their money and running up a bill in order to buy more drugs and to support their habit. Finally, the wife finds out and says, "What's going on here?" Or the husband finds out, "Well, why have we spent $5,000 this month on XYZ?" And come to find out, it's because of this addiction, because of the habits that a person's made. Now, my point in talking about this is really in Genesis chapter 20. So that was Genesis chapter 12. Now, look at chapter 20 with me. And now what's happened is Abraham has now had a name change. He's now the father of many nations. And he is God's anointed one, his appointed one to be used in a special way by God. And so he was Abram in chapter 12. He's now Abraham in chapter 20. And the same thing happens because of Abraham's heart. The same thing happens in chapter 20 that happened in chapter 12. Now, I didn't research to know how many years apart these things happened, but what's fascinating to me is sometimes I work with unbelievers who are struggling with addiction, then they get saved and they become believers and they still struggle with addiction and those same desires in their hearts, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life, those desires are still in their heart. They're still struggling with the same thing that they struggle with as an unbeliever. So just because you're a Christian doesn't mean everything's going to get zapped away and you're going to be strong and able to handle anything and be a different person. You may still have struggles in your life in certain ways that are similar to when you were an unbeliever. So look at chapter 20. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of Negeb and lived between Kadesh and Shur, and so he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, "Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother'? In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours." Verse 8 of chapter 20 of Genesis. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you that you've brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? Abraham responded, I did it because I thought, there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, this is the kindness you must do me. At every place to which we come, say of me, he is my brother. Verse 14, then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Well, once again, we see the same sin in essence repeated, and the same fear in Abraham's heart, the same motivation. And so as Abram, he was motivated by fear to lie, to be deceptive. And as Abraham, the same thing. Fear motivated him to lie and be deceptive. And ironic that in both of these accounts, these true historical accounts, in Genesis 12 and Genesis 20, Pharaoh and Abimelech are both the men who do the right thing and make it right. And of course, in both of those situations, God had to intervene. And in this case, he came to Abimelech in a dream and spoke to Abimelech to protect Sarah, to protect her integrity, and to create the desire in Abimelech to do the right thing. Interesting that the men of Abimelech in verse 8 were very much afraid when they heard this account from Abimelech, when he told his servants what had all happened. It's fascinating in addiction, it's the same way. People often struggle with the same heart issues, the same fears. They might use a different drug. They might turn, instead of to alcohol, they might turn to marijuana, to crystal meth, to opioids, or whatever it may be. Some may stop doing that and start gambling. Others may turn to spending money frivolously, or food addiction, as it's called, choices for food or for sex, for any kind of pleasure. People change their pleasures, but oftentimes what drives them, what motivates them, is the same heart motive, the same fears, the same struggles, the same desires for pleasure, lust of flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. Those same things drive their desires toward their addictive pleasure of choice. Well, we see this in Genesis 12 and 20. It's no different. Abraham really hasn't learned his lesson. He's still afraid of what people might do to him, even though he knows a bigger God. He says in verse 11, I did it because I thought, there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Well, in a sense, Abraham, ironically, he's not fearing God at all in his place. And he's afraid that he's going to be killed because of his wife and her beauty, and it's an unfounded fear. Maybe in some ways there was reason to believe this particular lie, but Abraham's believing a lie. He's failing to fear God. He's failing to honor God, and he's making choices that are affecting him and his wife, who he admits is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, but she became his wife. And so I want to encourage the people who are addicted listening and those who help the addicted. We have to help the addicted to become transparent, to become who they are at all times, not to wear a mask in one place and a different mask in a different place, to be something that they're not at church and try to put on a pretty mask in front of people and pretend that they have it all together, and then to have a real exchange with people in other places at their work or wherever. We want to help the addicted to be the same person, the same time, in every different place. So being the same transparent person and not trying to be a different person in a different place to different people. That's our mission, one of the things that is key to helping the addicted. And I would encourage any of the addicted today to think about, am I different in different places? Am I different at work? Am I different at home? Am I different at church? Am I different at a support group meeting? Am I a different person in different places? Do I tend to have different roles and act in a myriad of ways? Well, Abraham, and when he was Abram, struggled with this same heart desire, and it got him in the same fix, and even put his wife, who he didn't protect very well at all, in danger. And so thankfully the Lord intervened, and he intervenes in the addicted person's life. He has to. God has to intervene in someone's life. And so I can teach them Scripture, I can help them, I can talk to them, we can send them to support meetings. We can do all kinds of things with people. But if God doesn't intervene by His Spirit into the hearts, into the lives of people to bring change, they're not going to be redeemed, to see the goodness of God. As counselors, we can't change anyone's heart. There's no one's heart that we can change. But we can pray to the God who's still in the business of transforming hearts by His amazing grace. Learn the lesson that Abraham hopefully learned here and didn't learn in chapter 12, that he hopefully learned in chapter 20. And begin living your life in a transparent way where you speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, where you're transparent, and where you're dealing with the consequences of life and dealing with life on life's terms in a practical way, because we have to help our addicted persons to recognize that they can be who they are. They may have to deal with a fallen world and fallen choices and the circumstances that are coming apart around them, but that they can do it because of the one true God, the God who loves them, that they can fear, and the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, Proverbs 1 tells us. They can fear God, but fearing Him in a right way and living for Him rather than living for self or the lies that we believe. I think in this case, Abraham, and back when he was Abram, is believing lies. He's not believing truth, and he's not trusting God. And the irony here is that God can be trusted, and the two men who feared God were Abimelech and Pharaoh, not Abraham. So we want to help our counselees and the addicted to learn to trust God, to fear God, to live for God in a way that glorifies God. And it can be done. We see the addicted transformed by God's amazing grace all the time. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll be back at the next podcast. Thank you, and God bless you.